Good morning, Europe. Thanks for waking up with us. I'm Anka Ula, and these are your headlines this Wednesday, June 15th.
A last-minute ruling by the European Court of Human Rights blocks UK plans to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda. But the government says it won't be deterred. Russia promises safe passage to hundreds of civilians trapped by intense fighting in the Ukrainian city of Severodonetsk. And NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg says the alliance needs a higher state of readiness following Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
The UK has been forced to cancel a flight that was scheduled to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda. It followed last-minute intervention by the European Court of Human Rights, which said the actions carry a real risk of irreversible harm. Protesters have denounced the UK's plan, arguing it is illegal and inhumane to send people thousands of miles to a country they don't want to live in. And the UN has described the policy as an attack on the rights of refugees that most countries have recognized since the end of World War II, including the UK. Home Secretary Priti Patel, who signed the agreement with Rwanda last month, defended the plan, and she said the government will not be deterred from doing the right thing and delivering our plans to control our nation's borders, despite the first flight to Rwanda being stopped. Dismissing the outcry, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has defended Britain's policy, arguing that it is a legitimate way to protect lives and stop smugglers transporting migrants across the English Channel in small boats.
Russia says it's offering a humanitarian corridor for trapped civilians seeking to flee intense fighting in the devastated East Ukraine city of Severodonetsk. Like before in Mariupol, civilians are taking shelter in a plant complex. About 500 people, 40 of them children, need safe passage out. Ukraine's troops had earlier attempted to lead civilians to safety, but the destruction of the last 3 bridges out of the city had made it impossible. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has made a rallying cry to his people.
We have losses, unfortunately, and they are painful, but we need to hang in there. This is our state. Hanging there in Donbas is crucial. The more they lose there, the less strength they will have to continue the aggression. Donbas is the key to deciding who will dominate in the coming weeks.
After months of shelling in Severodonetsk and in the region nearby, some residents who've decided to stay are struggling with no water, electricity or phone signal, desperately hoping for the war to end. Obviously distressed, Yevgenia and Maxim ask why they're being bombed. There are no soldiers here, they said. There's no one here. Surrounded by destruction, there is a growing call for peace talks to end a war few understand.
NATO needs a higher state of readiness to strengthen its weapons capabilities along its eastern border in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg was speaking in the Netherlands following informal talks with the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte and the leaders of Denmark, Poland, Latvia, Romania, Portugal and Belgium. It comes ahead of a wider summit at the end of the month in Madrid.
Tonight we discussed the need for more robust and combat-ready forward presence, even higher readiness and more pre-positioned equipment and supplies. We also addressed the need to invest more in our defence and to invest more together to strengthen NATO's common funding.
The Polish Prime Minister expressed his support for Ukraine.
I ask you to do much more to deliver weapon, artillery to Ukraine. They need this to defend their country, to defend their territorial integrity and sovereignty. Where is our credibility if Ukraine fails? Can we imagine that Ukraine fails and we revert back to business as usual? I hope not.
Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has been showing his support for 500 French soldiers deployed in Romania since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Macron is expected to visit Moldova on Wednesday, and there's also a possible trip to Kyiv. Jens Stoltenberg is back in Brussels today, where he'll be hosting a two-day meeting of NATO defence ministers. Our correspondent Shona Murray has more.
Well, ministers for defence from NATO member states are here in Brussels for the next 2 days ahead of the big NATO summit in Madrid, where leaders from NATO countries will meet. Very much dominating the agenda is, of course, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. There will be the Minister for Defence from Ukraine attending the meeting today. Also Ministers for Defence from Sweden, Finland and Georgia. We understand Ukraine will be requesting much more military support, much more heavy weaponry such as long-range howitzers, armoured tanks, rocket launchers, drones and so on. Also dominating to a certain point will be Turkey's blocking of Sweden's accession into NATO for what Turkey says is Sweden's support of some Kurdish groups, and also a decision by the Swedish government before to end export licences for weapons to Turkey, something that the Swedish government said it is resolving. The hope is the issue can be reconciled by the next few weeks, so that at the big summit at the end of June in Madrid, Sweden and Finland can finally become fully fledged NATO members. Shona Murray, Euronews, Brussels.
Could this image signal a new era for France? MPs from Le Français Insoumis political party arrive at the National Assembly after they were elected in the first round of legislative elections. The left-wing NUPES coalition came out neck and neck on Sunday with Emmanuel Macron's presidential group, while Marine Le Pen's National Rally and the right-wing Republica trailed behind. Both they and Macron's party are claiming victory in the first round. And the war of words has begun. Analysts say there is very little chance that NUPES will get the majority it says it's aiming for this weekend.
We'll see what happens on Sunday, but it's still unlikely. The highest projections for the NUPES and the lowest for the presidential majority give the presidential majority a lead of between 60 and 70 seats. This is very substantial.
President Emmanuel Macron's coalition hopes to retain an absolute majority to pass its reforms, starting with the controversial pension reform. To do this, he needs to obtain 289 of the 577 seats, but nothing is certain.
Emmanuel Macron certainly had an unstoppable victory in the presidential election. But there is no real desire for him to have absolute power, nor is there any desire for the NUPES to be in a dominant position. And all this absence of desire on the right, on the left, in the centre, can be seen in the extremely high percentage of abstention.
Veteran leftist Jean-Luc Mélenchon heads up the NUPES coalition, comprising of his Le Français Insoumis party, the Greens, Communists, Socialists and other small groups. On the other end of the spectrum, La Repubblica will be looking to hang on to as many as possible of their current 101 seats.